So here I am catching up with your comments on the Kermode Uncut site, and the first thing I should say is you may have noticed something different. See all this? This is in direct response to a post from Estonian film fan who said, "Vampires are dead, so are zombies, bring back the werewolves." Having a go, but frankly I don't think it's working out. It's going to be off by Friday. So as you probably know, the theme of the blog last week was vampires. Why have we got so many vampire movies around at the moment? I was saying it's all to do with sex. Therefore, my favourite vampire movies are things like Let the Right One In or Kronos, which are nothing to do with sex at all. Anyway, I asked you to tell me what your favourite vampire movies were. And loads of mentions for things like Lost Boys, the TV version of Salem's Lot, which I think is very scary, Near Dark, which I'll come back to. This from Franjou. I'm not sure there's been much need for a new vampire flick since Dreyer's Vampyr. Along with Nosferatu, it has all the best vampire images. And this from Cloud Mountain, Werner Herzog's remake of Nosferatu has a very special place in my heart. Much better than the original. A rare view, I think. Klaus Kinski is perfect in the leading role, but yes, it is about sex. And the Herzog-Kinski bandwagon continues apace with this from Angry Cinephile. I also love Herzog's remake of Nosferatu with Klaus Kinski that someone else mentioned. Let the Right One In I thought was great though. Twilight was bad, Kermode. You were off the mark when you recommended that one last year. There's been a couple of people saying, you know, what's it with Twilight? Why do you like it? I really enjoyed Twilight. I think for its target audience, it was a really fine film. And I, for one, am looking forward to the sequel. And all you naysayers can get lost. I enjoyed it much more than I expected to, and I'm genuinely looking forward to the sequel. This from Marcindi. George A. Romero's Martin is definitely one of my favourites, obviously about sex, not so obviously about vampires. Now this I particularly enjoyed from Psychic Furs Fan 83. Pale skin, dark clothes, sensitive souls, brooding intensity. I'd say it very likely has to do with the emo craze, unfortunately. Much like in the 80s, when the greasy, leather-wearing vampires of Near Dark and the Lost Boys appealed to rock-loving teens of that era, and people over the age of teenage years. Now is the time for rock music's latest trend to find something alluring in today's vampire films. May I just say that it's a perfectly fine comment, but it does give me the chance to tell you one of my favourite jokes, which is, I wish my lawn was emo, because then it would cut itself. Just a couple of last comments. This from Caveman 1982. I highly recommend an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, many of you mentioned this, called Hush, which is an homage to silent cinema in some ways. The episode is set up with the power of speech being stolen by none other than the mighty Doug Jones, Del Toro's favourite son, and the episode plays out in silence. I have to say, despite the fact that I avoid most television most of the time, I have seen that particular episode, and you're right, it is terrific. This from Weird Not. Mario Bava's Mask of the Demon, Black Sunday, was a big influence on the horror vampire genre, but seems to have disappeared off the radar as Dario Argento has increasingly taken most of the plaudits for Italian cinema. There is a documentary about Mario Bava called Mario Bava, Maestro of the Macabre, made around 2000, which is very, very good. I know, because I voiced it. I didn't write it. It was written by Alan Jones, and it's well worth tracking down if you can. Also, of course, Tim Lucas's book, All the Colours of the Dark. And finally, as I said before, many of you wrote in saying, Mark, why didn't you mention Near Dark? I mean, Near Dark's a classic. It's a modern classic. How come that didn't come up? And I'll tell you, the reason is very simple. And it's a sentimental reason. There are some things which sometimes you don't talk about because they're kind of personal. And funnily enough, the reason I didn't mention Near Dark is this. Near Dark has a very special place in my heart because I went on a first date with a woman to see Near Dark many, many years ago. And reader, I married her.